The Valorian Empire controlled most of the galaxy. They had been the strongest power for 3,000 years. Their warships numbered in the thousands, each one bigger than a small moon. Every species they met either joined them peacefully or was forced to join. The pattern never changed. They always won. Commander Thexal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Infinite Reach. It was the biggest warship in the fleet. He looked at the screens showing the latest reports from scout ships. Another new species had been found. They called themselves humans, and they came from a blue planet called Earth. The report said humans were not special. They had no special powers. They could not read minds. They had no natural weapons. Their bodies were soft and weak. They got sick easily. They took many years to grow up. The scout ship said humans had only learned to travel faster than light about 100 years ago. Their biggest ships were only 1 kilometer long. Thexal read the recommendation from the science team. It said the humans should be easy to control. They predicted no real fight. The humans would see the Valorian ships and surrender quickly. It always happened that way. He decided to send 40 warships. That was more than enough for such a weak species. The fleet would reach Earth's star system in 10 days. Thexal was not worried. In 3,000 years, the Valorians had never lost a battle. They had never even had a hard fight. Far away on the edge of human space, a small Valorian scout ship flew toward a human patrol area. The scout ship was called Observer 7. It was not a warship. It only had light weapons and basic shields. Scout ships were used to deliver messages and gather information. They were never in danger because no one dared attack Valorian ships. The pilot of Observer 7 saw a human ship on his screens. It was small, maybe 300 meters long. The ship's name was TCS Indomitable. The Valorian pilot checked his database. TCS meant Terran Coalition Ship. Terran was another word for human. The pilot smiled. This would be easy. He would tell the humans to surrender. They would be scared. Then he would leave and report back. It was a simple job. He had done it many times before with other species. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Jiho Kang watched his screens. An unknown ship had appeared at the edge of their patrol zone. The ship was not trying to hide. It was scanning them with active sensors. That was hostile behavior. Jiho was a calm man. He had been a captain for 5 years. He had fought in 3 wars before this. He knew when someone was looking for trouble. He turned to his tactical officer. "Lieutenant Yuna Park, what do you see?" he asked. Yuna was young but very smart. Her fingers moved fast across her console. "One ship, sir. About 200 meters. It's scanning us. No weapons are aimed at us yet, but their shields are turning on." Jiho nodded. "Open a communication channel." The communication officer, Suji Lee, pressed buttons on her panel. "Channel open, sir." "Unknown vessel. This is the Terran Coalition ship Indomitable," Jiho said in a clear voice. "You have entered restricted space. Identify yourself and tell us why you are here." The answer came back in broken standard language. The voice sounded proud and dismissive. "Primitive vessel, you will submit to the Valorian Empire. Resistance is futile. Prepare to be boarded." The bridge became very quiet. Everyone stared at the speakers. Engineering Officer Hyun Cho looked up from his station. His eyes were wide. "Sir, did they just threaten us?" Hyun asked. "Yes, they did," Jiho said. His voice was calm, but his eyes became hard. "Lieutenant Park, give me details on that ship." Yuna worked quickly. "Sir, their technology is better than ours. Maybe 20 or 30 years ahead, but they're sending all their data without encryption. They're either very stupid or very arrogant. Maybe both," Jiho said quietly. "Can we hurt them?" Yuna studied her screens. "Their shields are strong, but I can see the pattern. They rotate the shield frequency every few seconds. If we time it right, we can predict where the weak spot will be. They have one big plasma weapon on the front. Their defense against missiles is weak, and sir, they're not even at battle stations. I think they don't see us as a threat." Jiho felt anger rise in his chest. No one threatened his ship. No one threatened his crew. He had fought too hard and lost too many friends to let some arrogant aliens push him around. Red alert, he ordered. Charge all railguns. Load missiles in tubes 1 through 8. Target their shield generator. The ship's alarm sounded. Red lights flashed. The crew moved quickly to their battle positions. They had trained for this, they were ready. On the Observer 7, the pilot saw the human ship's power increase. He was not worried. Primitives could not harm a Valorian ship. Their weapons were too weak. He almost laughed. These humans would learn their place soon. Then the first railgun slug hit his shields. The pilot stopped laughing. The impact made his whole ship shake. Alarms started ringing. His shield strength dropped from 100% to 60%. How was that possible? Before he could think, 7 more slugs hammered the same spot on his shields. Each one hit within microseconds of the other. The timing was perfect. The shields collapsed completely. The pilot felt real fear for the first time in his life. He reached for the controls to run away. Then he saw 8 missiles on his screen coming fast. He had time to send one automated distress signal before the missiles hit. The explosion was bright enough to be seen for millions of kilometers. On the Indomitable, the crew watched the fireball slowly fade. No one spoke for several seconds. Then Suji Lee broke the silence. "Sir, I'm picking up a distress beacon. It's broadcasting on every frequency they have." Jiho's face showed no emotion. "How long until their fleet receives it?" "Unknown, sir. But they know where we are now. They know we're here." Jiho stood up from his command chair. "Set course for Earth. Maximum speed. Command needs to know we're not alone in the galaxy anymore. And these Valorians underestimated us. That's our advantage, but it won't last long." The Indomitable jumped into faster-than-light travel, leaving behind the debris of the Valorian scout ship. None of the crew knew they had just started a war. None of them knew this moment would change the galaxy forever. Behind them, the distress beacon kept broadcasting its message into the dark of space, calling for revenge. The news of Observer 7's destruction reached the Valorian High Command within hours. Commander Thexal watched the recording 3 times. He could not believe what he was seeing. A scout ship destroyed. It had not happened in his lifetime. It had not happened in his father's lifetime. The Valorian Empire did not lose ships to primitives. "Show me again," he ordered. His tactical officer played the recording once more. The data was clear. The human ship fired simple kinetic weapons, metal slugs moving at incredible speed. Then came fusion missiles. The Observer 7 never had time to fight back. The whole battle lasted less than 30 seconds. "The scout ship never raised its combat shields," the tactical officer said. The crew did not think there was any danger. Thexal's crest flared red with anger. "Of course there was no danger. These are primitives. How could anyone predict they would attack without even hearing our terms?" "Perhaps, Commander, they did not want to hear our terms." The words hung in the air. Thexal stared at his officer. The idea was strange. Every species wanted to hear the terms. Every species tried to negotiate. These humans just shot first. It was barbaric. It was uncivilized. It was unthinkable. "Change the plans," Thexal ordered. "I want the fleet at Earth in 5 days, not 10. And increase the force. Add 20 more warships. These humans need to learn what happens when you attack the Valorian Empire." The subjugation fleet grew to 60 ships. It was the largest force assembled in centuries. Each ship carried enough weapons to destroy continents. Thexal would lead the fleet himself. He would make sure these humans learned their lesson. They would kneel, or they would burn. On Earth, alarms rang in every military command center. The Terran Coalition Council met in emergency session. All the important leaders were there. They sat around a large table, watching holographic displays show what they knew about the Valorian fleet. Admiral Doyun Song stood at the head of the table. He was an old man with gray hair and hard eyes. He had fought in more wars than anyone else in the room. He had never lost a battle. He did not plan to start now. 60 capital ships, Doyun said. His voice was steady and calm. "We have 18. They are bigger than us. They have stronger shields. Their weapons are more powerful." He paused and looked around the table. "But we have advantages they don't know about." Representative Minji Choi leaned forward. She was young for a council member, but she was smart. "Admiral, Captain Kang's report says these Valorians treat war like a ceremony. They've never had a real fight." "That's correct," Doyun said. "They send a fleet. The enemy sees the fleet and surrenders. It's been working for 3,000 years. They don't use encrypted communications. They broadcast their tactics openly. They maintain perfect formations. They've forgotten how to actually fight. Council Chairman Taeyang Kim spoke quietly. And we haven't. Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. Exactly, Doyen said. He pressed a button and the display changed. It now showed the planet Neptune, far from Earth. They think they're facing primitives. Let them think that. We'll set a trap at Neptune. We'll make them confident. Then we'll show them what humans do best. Representative Nari Huang raised her hand. What do humans do best, Admiral? Doyen's smile was cold and hard. We survive, no matter what. And we win. The council voted. It was unanimous. They would fight. Earth would not surrender without a battle. The military began preparing immediately. They had 5 days. Captain Jiho Kang landed his ship at the main military base. He was called to meet with Admiral Doyen immediately. When he entered the Admiral's office, he was surprised to see his entire bridge crew there. Yuna Park, Hyuncho, and Suji Lee all stood at attention. At ease, Doyen said. He looked at Jiho. Captain, you fired the first shots in this war. You and your crew. Some people might blame you for starting a conflict. Jiho's face remained calm. They threatened us, sir. They demanded we surrender. I made a decision. You made the right decision, Doyen said firmly. If you had surrendered, they would have taken you prisoner. They would have learned about Earth from you. Then they would have come anyway, but with more information. You gave us time. You showed us their weaknesses. Because of you, we have a chance. He walked to a wall display. I'm forming a special task force. 18 ships. Your crew has the most experience fighting Valorians. One battle, but it's one more than anyone else. I want you as my tactical advisor. Jiho blinked. Sir, I'm just a patrol captain. You were a patrol captain, Doyen corrected. Now you're a commodore. And your crew is getting promotions too. Lieutenant Park, you're now a captain. You'll command the Indomitable in the coming battle. Yuna looked shocked. Sir, I've never commanded a ship. You destroyed a Valorian scout ship, Doyen said. That's more than most captains can say. You'll do fine. Over the next 5 days, Earth prepared for war. Every shipyard worked day and night. They built weapons platforms and missile batteries. They built railgun emplacements hidden in Neptune's rings. They built the largest electromagnetic pulse generators ever designed. The plan was simple but risky. The 18 Terran warships would wait at Neptune in an obvious defensive formation. The Valorians would see them and attack, expecting an easy victory. But hidden throughout the system were hundreds of automated weapons platforms. When the enemy fleet arrived, the platforms would activate. The electromagnetic pulse would scramble their shields and sensors. Then the railguns would fire. Then the Terran ships would break formation and attack in a coordinated strike. It was a desperate plan. But it was the only plan they had. Captain Yuna Park stood on the bridge of the Indomitable. Her bridge, her ship. It felt strange. 5 days ago she was a lieutenant. Now she was a captain, commanding the ship where she had served for 3 years. Hyun Cho was now her chief engineer. Suji Lee was still her communications officer. They were her friends. Now they were her crew. She had to keep them alive. All stations report ready, Captain, Hyun said from engineering. Yuna took a deep breath. Thank you. Suji, open a channel to the fleet. Channel open, Captain. Yuna spoke clearly. This is Captain Park on the Indomitable. We started this war 5 days ago. We destroyed their scout ship because they threatened us. Now they're coming with 60 ships to make us pay. But we're not going to pay. We're going to make them pay. For every human life they threaten. For thinking we're weak. For thinking we'll just surrender. Today we show them what happens when you mess with Earth. Are you with me? The response came from 17 other ships. We're with you, Captain. Yuna smiled. Good, all ships take positions. They'll be here soon. In the distance, reality rippled. 60 Valorian warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They had arrived. The battle was about to begin. Commander Thexal stood on the bridge of his flagship as the fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel. The blue planet Earth hung in the distance, third from the star. Billions of humans lived on that world. Soon they would all kneel before the Valorian Empire. Commander, sensors are detecting 17 Terran warships near the 8th planet, the sensor officer reported. They're in a defensive formation. 17. Thexal made a sound that might have been laughter. They've gathered their entire fleet in one place. How convenient. We'll destroy them all at once, then proceed to their homeworld. The tactical officer studied his displays. Sir, they're just waiting. Not advancing, not retreating. Just holding position. They're scared, Thexal said with confidence. They see our fleet and they know they cannot win. But they'll fight anyway because they're too stupid to surrender. It doesn't matter. This will be over quickly. All ships advance. Keep formation. Set weapons to minimum power. I want prisoners, not corpses. The 60 Valorian warships moved forward in perfect formation. Each one maintained exact distance from the others. It was beautiful. It was orderly. It was how civilized species fought wars. Thexal felt proud. These primitives would learn what real military power looked like. On the bridge of the Defiant, Admiral Doyen Song watched the enemy fleet approach. Beside him, Commodore Jiho Kang studied every detail of their movement. Both men had fought many battles. Both men knew what they were seeing. They're not even worried, Jiho said quietly. Look at that formation. Perfect spacing. They're moving like they're in a parade, not a battle. Arrogant, Doyen agreed. He opened a channel to all Terran ships. This is Admiral Song. The enemy is taking the bait. They think we're weak. They think this will be easy. Today we teach them the most important lesson in warfare. Never underestimate your enemy. All ships execute Omega Protocol on my mark. He switched to fleet-wide communication so every crew member could hear. Today we face an enemy that thinks we're primitives. They think we're weak. They think we'll break easily. Show them what Earth is made of. Show them what humans can do. For humanity. From 17 bridges the response came back. For humanity. The Valorian fleet entered Neptune's orbit. They were exactly where Doyen wanted them. Mark, he ordered. Everything happened at once. From Neptune's rings, 50 weapons platforms activated. They had been hidden there for 5 days, cold and silent. Now they came alive. The Valorians had been scanning the area, but they had only looked for ships. They never thought to look for platforms disguised as ice and rock. The first thing that happened was the electromagnetic pulse. Massive generators fired simultaneously, sending a wave of energy through the Valorian formation. Shields flickered and died. Sensors went dark. Communications became static. For a few precious seconds, the mighty Valorian fleet was blind and defenseless. Then came the railguns. Hundreds of railgun emplacements opened fire. Metal slugs accelerated to incredible speeds, tearing through space. Without shields, the Valorian ships were vulnerable. The slugs punched through hulls, destroyed engines, and shattered weapon systems. The perfect formation became chaos. All ships break and engage, Doyen ordered. The 17 Terran warships scattered from their defensive position. Each one had a specific target. Each one knew exactly what to do. They had practiced this for 5 days. Captain Una Park brought the Indomitable alongside a Valorian cruiser. The enemy ship was twice her size, but its shields were down and its crew was confused. Una didn't hesitate. Fire all missiles, she ordered. 8 missiles launched from the Indomitable, crossing the short distance in seconds. They hit the cruiser's engine section. The explosion was massive. The cruiser's power died. It began to drift, helpless. Target the next one, Una said. Keep moving. Don't give them time to lock onto us. All across the battlefield, the same pattern repeated. Terran ships moved fast, striking hard, then breaking away before the Valorians could respond. They didn't fight fair. They didn't maintain formation. They fought like wolves, attacking weak points and avoiding strength. Captain Unji An commanded the Relentless, a heavy destroyer. She saw a Valorian battleship trying to restore its shields. The battleship was huge, maybe 5 times larger than her ship. Under normal circumstances, the Relentless would have no chance against it. But these were not normal circumstances. Close to minimum range, Yunji ordered. Target their shield generator. Her pilot, Lieutenant Junho Kim, looked back at her with wide eyes. Captain, that's suicide range. Do it, Yunji said calmly. The Relentless accelerated directly toward the battleship. Alarms screamed as they entered the range where the battleship's weapons could destroy them instantly. But the battleship's weapons were still resetting after the electromagnetic pulse.
They had seconds. Fire!
Yunji shouted. Every railgun on the Relentless fired at once. The slugs hit the shield generator before it could fully charge. The generator exploded, taking out a large section of the battleship's hull. Secondary explosions rippled through the ship. Get us out of here, Yunji ordered. The Relentless spun away just as the battleship's weapons came online. Plasma bolts filled the space where they had been moments before, but the Relentless was already gone, moving to the next target. Commander Thexol watched his fleet being torn apart. His beautiful formation was gone. His ships were scattered, confused, and dying. The tactical displays showed red markers everywhere. Red meant damaged or destroyed. There was so much red. Impossible, he shouted. They're primitives. How are they doing this? His tactical officer worked frantically at his console. Sir, they hid weapons throughout the system. The electromagnetic pulse knocked out our shields. And their ships? They're not fighting in formation. Each vessel is acting independently. They're targeting our weak points. Our crews don't know how to respond to this kind of attack. Full power to all weapons, Thexol ordered. Destroy them.
Kill them all!
But it was too late. The Valorians had come expecting a quick victory. They had brought overwhelming force but no real combat training. They had powerful weapons but no tactics. They had advanced technology but no experience using it in a real fight. The humans had brought fury. They had brought tactics learned from thousands of years of fighting each other. They had brought the will to survive at any cost. And they had brought the element of surprise. The battle lasted 30 minutes. When it was over, 48 Valorian ships were destroyed or crippled. Only 12 escaped, their engines damaged and shields barely functioning. They jumped to faster-than-light travel as soon as they could, running away from the battle. The Terran fleet had lost 4 ships. 8 more were damaged but still operational. They held the battlefield. They had won. Admiral Doyen Song looked at the tactical display. Debris floated everywhere. Some of it was Valorian, some of it was human. Good people had died today, but Earth was safe. For now, secure the battlefield, he ordered. Rescue all survivors, ours and theirs. We're not barbarians. Jiho stood beside him looking at the destruction. They'll come back. With more ships. Maybe, Doyen said. Or maybe they'll talk instead. We hurt them badly. They're not used to being hurt. Sometimes pain teaches better than words. He turned to the communications officer. Get me a channel to Valorian High Command. It's time we had a conversation. The emergency session of the Valorian Grand Council was unlike anything in their history. For 3,000 years, the council had met to discuss expansion, trade, and the integration of new species. They had never met to discuss defeat. The word itself felt strange. The council chamber was enormous, with seats for all the high-ranking members. Today, every seat was filled. The holographic displays showed the battle at Neptune over and over. Council members watched in silence as their fleet was destroyed by primitive humans. Council member Vexthon spoke first. His voice was angry. 48 ships destroyed. 12 more barely escaped. This is impossible. We sent 60 warships against 18. How did we lose? Fleet Commander Thexol stood before the council. He had been demoted from his position, but they still needed his report. His crest was pale with shame. Honored Council, the humans are unlike any species we have encountered. They do not fight with honor. They do not maintain formation. They use deception and tricks. They coordinate their ships in ways our training never prepared us for. They're primitives, another council member protested. Their technology is inferior to ours. How can primitives defeat the Valorian Empire? Technology is not everything, Thexol said quietly. We have been the strongest power for so long that we forgot what real combat looks like. We send fleets to intimidate. We offer terms. Species surrender. We have not fought a real battle in living memory. The humans, they have never stopped fighting. They fight each other. They train for war constantly. They know things about combat that we have forgotten. The council chamber was silent. No one wanted to admit it, but Thexol was right. The Valorian military was designed for intimidation, not warfare. Their ships were powerful, but their crews had no real combat experience. They were like a person with a sword who had never learned to use it. The main holographic display suddenly activated. A human face appeared. The council members recognized him from intelligence reports. Admiral Doyen Song of the Terran Coalition. The human's expression was neutral, but his eyes were sharp and intelligent. Honorable Council, the Admiral said. He was speaking perfect Valorian. I am Admiral Song of the Terran Coalition. My people did not seek war with your empire. Your scout vessel threatened us first. Your fleet came to subjugate us. We defended our home. Any species would do the same. You destroyed 48 warships, Vexthon said angrily. Thousands of Valorians died. You brought 60 warships to conquer us, Doyen replied calmly. You came to take our freedom. You came to make us slaves. We said no, we fought back. Are you angry that we defended ourselves? Or are you angry that we won? The question hung in the air. Several council members looked uncomfortable. They had never thought about it that way. The Empire had always been the aggressor. But in their minds that was acceptable because they always won. Now that they had lost, the moral questions became harder. Doyen continued. I did not contact you to debate the past. I contacted you to discuss the future. You have two choices. First choice, you can send more fleets. You can try to destroy Earth. Maybe you will succeed eventually. You have more ships than us. But how many will you lose? How many Valorian lives are you willing to sacrifice? And what happens to your empire while your fleets are busy fighting us? Council member Kethara leaned forward. She was older than most and wiser. What is the second choice? Peace, Doyen said simply. Earth remains independent. We sign a treaty. We respect each other's borders. And we help each other. Help? Vexthon laughed harshly. What could primitives offer the Valorian Empire? Doyen's expression didn't change. We can teach you how to fight. The council chamber erupted in angry voices. Primitives teaching the Valorian Empire? It was an insult. It was unthinkable. But Kethara raised her hand for silence. Explain, Admiral. You have forgotten how to truly fight, Doyen said bluntly. Your empire is vast. You have controlled the galaxy for 3,000 years. But it's built on a simple assumption, that overwhelming force brings quick surrender. What happens when you face a species that doesn't surrender? What happens when you face an enemy that has spent its entire existence perfecting warfare? He let that sink in. Then he continued. We learned something about the galaxy in the past few months. You're not the only empire out here. There are others. Some are far away. Some are still sleeping. But sooner or later you'll face enemies who won't kneel. When that day comes, do you want commanders trained in real combat? Or commanders who only know how to issue surrender demands? Thexel spoke up. The human is correct, Honored Council. During my time commanding against them, I learned more about real tactics than in my entire military career. They think differently. They adapt constantly. They turn weakness into advantage. The council debated for hours. Some members wanted revenge. They wanted to send more fleets and destroy Earth completely. But others, led by Kethara, argued for peace. The humans had proven themselves. Maybe there was wisdom in listening to them. Finally, they voted. By a narrow margin, the council chose peace. They would send diplomats to Earth. They would negotiate a treaty. 6 months later, the Treaty of Mars was signed on the red planet halfway between Earth and the outer system. It was a historic moment. The treaty had several key points. First, Earth was recognized as an independent power with full sovereignty. Second, humans would be given a seat on the Valorian Council, the first non-Valorian species ever granted such status. Third, a military exchange program would be established. Admiral Doyen Song stood in the conference room on Mars, watching representatives from both sides sign the treaty. Beside him stood Commodore Jiho Kang, who had been promoted again for his service. Do you think it will work? Jiho asked quietly. The treaty? Doyen shrugged. Treaties always work until they don't, but the exchange program will make a difference. Once Valorian officers train with us, once they see how we think and fight, they'll change. Their military will become stronger, and we'll learn from them too. Their technology is impressive, Jiho agreed. Technology without tactics is just expensive toys, Doyen said. But tactics without technology has limits too. Together, we'll both be stronger. The first group of Valorian military cadets arrived at the Terran Naval Academy 3 months after the treaty was signed. They were proud, these young Valorians. They came from the greatest empire in the galaxy. They expected to show the humans how superior they were. The first day of training destroyed those expectations. Commander Minji Choi, one of Earth's top tactical instructors, stood before the class of 50 Valorian cadets. Also in the class were 20 human cadets. Minji looked at them all with a slight smile. Today we begin your education in real combat tactics, she said. You Valorian cadets have learned about formations, about standard attack patterns, about overwhelming force. Those things have their place. But war is not about following patterns. War is about breaking patterns. War is about doing what your enemy doesn't expect. She activated a holographic display showing a simulation. This is a standard Valorian fleet formation, beautiful, orderly, powerful. She pressed a button. This is how humans would attack it. The simulation showed small ships darting in from unexpected angles, targeting specific weak points, breaking apart the formation with coordinated strikes. The Valorian cadets watched in shock as the formation collapsed. "That's not fair," one Valorian cadet protested. "You're not following proper tactics." "Exactly," Minji said with a smile. "In real combat there is no fair. There is only survival. The enemy will use every advantage. You must do the same. Today you begin to unlearn what you know. You begin to think like warriors, not soldiers in a parade." The training was hard. The Valorian cadets struggled at first. Everything they had learned was challenged. But slowly they began to understand. They began to think differently. They began to adapt. One cadet, a young Valorian named Crix, excelled above all others. He absorbed the human way of thinking quickly. When asked why, he said something that would be remembered for generations. "The Valorians taught me to be strong. The humans taught me to be smart. Together, I am both." Word of the training program spread through the Valorian Empire. Some older officers resisted. They refused to believe primitives had anything to teach them, but younger officers volunteered eagerly. They had seen the battle reports. They knew the old ways had failed. They wanted to learn the new ways, and slowly the Valorian military began to change. 2 years after the Treaty of Mars, the galaxy was a different place. The Valorian Empire remained the largest power, but it was no longer the same empire. Human tactical doctrine had spread through their military. Valorian officers trained alongside human instructors. The old ways of warfare were slowly being replaced. Commodore Jiho Kang stood on the bridge of the new flagship TCS Neptune's Fury. The ship was named after the battle that had changed everything. It was larger than the old Indomitable, equipped with both human and Valorian technology, the best of both civilizations in one vessel. Beside him, Captain Yuna Park reviewed the latest training reports. She had been promoted again and now served as Jiho's executive officer. Together they oversaw the joint training program that brought Valorian cadets to human space for combat education. "The new class is doing well," Yuna reported, "better than the first group. Word has spread through the Valorian military. The cadets arrive ready to learn now, not ready to prove their superiority." Jiho nodded. "Fear is a good teacher. They saw what happened at Neptune. They know the old ways failed." On the training deck, 50 Valorian cadets ran through combat simulations. The scenarios were based on real battles from human history, wars where smaller forces defeated larger ones through tactics and cunning. The Valorians learned about ambushes, feints, and psychological warfare. They learned to think like their enemies. They learned to adapt. Instructor Hyuncho, now a commander, walked between the simulation pods. He stopped at one where a young Valorian was struggling. The cadet's name was Velix. "You're thinking too much about honor," Hyun said gently. "Honor is important, but survival comes first. Your enemy doesn't care about your honor. They care about killing you. Use every advantage." Velix looked frustrated. "But the simulation says I should attack the enemy fleet head-on." "That is where their main force is." "The simulation is testing you," Hyun explained. "It wants to see if you'll do the obvious thing or the smart thing." "What did we teach you about obvious targets?" "They're usually traps," Velix said slowly. Understanding dawned in his eyes. "I should look for the real target." "Now you're learning," Hyun said with a smile. Far across the galaxy, in the Valorian High Council chambers, important decisions were being made. Reports had come in about activity in the outer regions. Unknown ships had been detected. They were larger than Valorian vessels and used technology nobody recognized. Council member Kethara studied the reports with concern. She was now the head of the council, voted in after the previous head had been removed for the Neptune disaster. She had supported the treaty with Earth. Now she was glad she had. "These unknown ships are moving into our territory," she said to the assembled council. "We need to respond, but we don't know what we're facing." "We should send a fleet," Vexthon suggested. He had opposed the human alliance, but even he had to admit the military reforms had made them stronger. "A show of force." "No," Kethara said firmly. "That's the old way. That's what got us into trouble with the humans. First we gather information, then we make decisions. We send scouts, not battleships," the council agreed. But Kethara did something else. She contacted Admiral Doyen Song on Earth. The communication took several hours because of the distance, but the response was worth waiting for. Doyen's face appeared on the holographic display. He was older now, his hair completely gray, but his eyes were still sharp. Council Member Cathara, it's good to hear from you. What can Earth do for the Valorian Empire? We've detected unknown vessels in our outer territories, Cathara explained. She sent him the data. We don't know who they are or what they want. You've dealt with many different species in your wars. What would you advise? Doyen studied the information for several minutes. Then he looked up. These ships are using advanced stealth technology. They're not here by accident. They're scouting you, just like you scouted Earth before the war. Someone is evaluating the Valorian Empire as a potential target. What should we do? Don't send a fleet, Doyen said immediately. That tells them you're aggressive and predictable. Instead, send one ship. Make it fast and well-armed, but make it clear you want to talk, not fight. Show strength, but also show wisdom. And Cathara? Send a ship with a mixed crew, Valorian and human. Show them you have allies. 3 weeks later, the TCS-VEL Unity departed from the joint naval base orbiting Mars. It was a new class of ship, designed by engineers from both civilizations. The crew was half human, half Valorian. Commanding the mission was Captain Yunji An, who had distinguished herself at Neptune. Her second in command was a Valorian officer named Thexrion, nephew of the disgraced Thexal. The young Valorian had grown up hearing about his uncle's failure. It had driven him to become the best officer in his class. He had trained extensively with human instructors and understood their way of thinking. Are you nervous? Yunji asked as they approached the coordinates where the unknown ships had been detected. Yes, Thexrion admitted. But my uncle taught me something even in his disgrace. He said the greatest mistake is assuming you know everything. We know nothing about these visitors, so we must be ready for anything. Good answer, Yunji said. Stay alert. All stations battle-ready status, but weapons cold. We're here to talk first. The Unity's sensors detected the unknown ship almost immediately. It was massive, perhaps 3 times the size of a Valorian battleship. Its design was unlike anything in the database. The hull was dark and angular, almost organic-looking. Hail them, Yunji ordered. All languages. Standard greeting protocols. Communications Officer Suji Lee, who had transferred to the Unity, sent the message on multiple frequencies. For several minutes there was no response. Then the massive ship began to move. Captain, they're approaching, Thexrion reported. His voice was steady despite the tension. No weapons charged. They're matching our speed. A communication came through. The language was strange, musical. But the translation computers worked quickly. The message was simple. You are different from before, explain. Yunji smiled. They scouted the Valorians before. Now they see a mixed crew. They're curious. She activated the communication system. This is Captain Yunji An of the Unity, representing both the Terran Coalition and the Valorian Empire. We are allies. We come in peace to learn who you are and what brings you to this region of space. There was a pause. Then allies? The Valorians dominate. They do not ally. They do now, Yunji said. Things have changed. Would you like to hear the story? The beings on the unknown ship were called the Korthans. They were an ancient race older than the Valorians. They had been watching the galaxy for centuries, staying hidden. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had seen the Valorian Empire grow strong through conquest. The Korthans had been preparing for war. They assumed the Valorians would eventually threaten them. But now they saw something unexpected. They saw Valorians working with another species as equals. They saw a military that valued tactics over brute force. They saw an empire that was learning and changing. The leader of the Korthan ship, an elder named Vexthar, spoke with Yunji for hours. She told him about the battle at Neptune, about how humans and Valorians had been enemies but became allies, about how both civilizations had grown stronger together. Remarkable, Vexthar said finally. The Valorian Empire was static for 3,000 years. In just 2 years you have transformed it. How did you do this? We didn't transform them, Yunji said honestly. They transformed themselves. We just gave them a reason to change. Sometimes you need to lose before you can learn to win. The Korthans decided not to attack. Instead, they opened diplomatic relations with both the Valorian Empire and the Terran Coalition. They shared some of their advanced technology. They became observers curious about this new alliance. Word spread across the galaxy. The story of Earth and the Valorian Empire became legend. Other species heard about the humans who refused to surrender. They heard about the mighty empire that learned humility. They heard about two civilizations that became stronger together than they were apart. 5 years after the battle at Neptune, former Fleet Commander Thexal stood in a classroom at the Terran Naval Academy. He had been invited to speak to a new class of cadets, both human and Valorian. He was old now, his crest faded, but his voice was still strong. "I was there at the beginning," he told the young cadets. "I led the fleet that attacked Earth. I expected an easy victory. I expected primitives to kneel before superior force. I learned a hard lesson that day. I learned that technology is not enough. Numbers are not enough. Strength is not enough. You must have the will to adapt, the courage to change, the wisdom to learn from those who seem weaker than you." A human cadet raised his hand. "Sir, do you regret the war?" Thexal was quiet for a moment. "I regret the lives lost, on both sides, but I do not regret what came after. The war taught us what peace could not. It forced us to see our weaknesses. It gave us allies instead of subjects. The Valorian Empire is stronger now than it was before Earth. Not because we have more ships, but because we have better warriors." He looked around the room at the young faces, human and Valorian sitting together. "You are the future. You have been taught by both civilizations. You carry the strength of the Valorian Empire and the cunning of Earth.